the bigger problem is that in 2025, what does it say about us as a community and where we've advanced, that if in 2025 we still cannot acknowledge 90s colorism as bad?
The reason that people attacked Ari Lennox is because of how she looks. I feel like if a light-skinned person or a racially ambiguous or a white person was to have the same critique, I think that they would have been praised for saying that.
When I watched those episodes, like I said, Pam was probably there for like 20, 30 seconds in the ones that I was watching. But sure enough, it was the same damn jokes every single time.
There's so much discourse, and not everybody is not only well-read, but not everybody holds the same opinion within a given group about how best to navigate these isms and phobias, because 5 dark-skinned people, 5 fat women, 5 women of different races or of the same race but different experiences have told me different things.
Anytime this conversation comes up, it's always like, if you're dark and you're complaining about this stuff, you get accused of just being insecure.
Why don't y'all talk about white men? Like, I'm talking about really critically talking about it. Where's the risky comedy punching up? Where is that riskiness?
Hello, beautiful Black people.
Hey, friend. No, I watched the last episode where it's like, we need to start saying it back. Yes.
Let me tell you why I've gathered you here today. So I feel like I thought that we all knew Martin was colorist in a very like the sky is blue kind of way. I actually did not know that was like groundbreaking in any way. So when I heard Ari Lennox say it the other day, I thought, yes, the sky is blue. And she's talking about the sky as being blue. And I moved on. I completely. So tell me why. When I look, I see all kind of like, not even just the internet, not even just like the shade room comments and places. I'm talking people I know, people with platforms that I know, and I see mutuals like talking about Ari Lennox, calling her all kind of whiny, and this how it was with jokes. And like, I saw like feigned intellectuals like doing nimble gymnastics, twisting themselves into like pretzels, trying to make it seem like Martin wasn't colorist sweet. And I was blown away because Martin, I'm gonna open to the floor, but I guess I'm gonna say this. Martin was colorist as fuck. You can like something, you can appreciate something and appreciate all the ways in which it was great in a million different ways and still acknowledge a thing. And that does not mean that you can't like it. I think that's something I talked about in my Illuminati production, the last one, how this didn't age well, has ruined media literacy in the sense that people do a thing that I call virtue mirroring, where they think that they have to pretend everybody and everything about any media they like was great and pure, or it reflects badly on them. But I think this is a little bit more than that, because I think it's not just that people are defensive, that they think you're telling them they can't like Martin or something anymore. I've been looking at what people have been actually saying, and it's more that it's that they want to be able to continue to do that. They keep saying like, oh, people used to be able to take a joke. People used to be able to take a joke. And it's this idea that like, you should be able to make jokes about dark-skinned people, and it's funny, it's a joke, and it should be able to, like, that's something you should be able to do, and it should not be recognized as colorist. Like, people have no idea how much they start sounding like the white man, like when white people don't want to be racist, but they want to do everything racist, but the word racism upsets them. That's how people erupt at color. It's fucking colorist. I can't even believe that's even something. So anyway, I'm gonna open that to the floor. I just wanted to say that.
I felt the same way you did. I like when it came across my phone, I was like, we doing this again? Like, I feel like this conversation is like as old as I am. I was born in like 97. This conversation is literally as old as I am. So I just was confused. At a certain point, I just kind of like tuned it out. I was like, man, there's like podcasts I listen to. If I saw that the episode was about that, I'm like, I'm skipping this week. I can't do it. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely feel like it was a color. I think, specifically, is this a safe space? No, yeah. Fine. No.
I would say
I enjoy a litany of different styles of comedy, including but not limited to problematic comedy, self-deprecating comedy, because of my relationship or what I believe, what I understand the role of comedy to be, right? It's to expose either the truths that person holds, or they are like stereotypes or archetypes that exist, and to exaggerate them for the purpose of I guess inspiring conversations that help you deal with the thing, right? Whether you're talking about capitalism, working a 9-to-5 and how that's exhausting you, living in a bigger body, being dark skinned. But one, I want to say there's something specific about the way colorism showed up on the Martin show specifically, because these were like all colorism is bad, right? But Martin was literally referring to her as a beast. This was the premise of the jokes, right?
Yeah,
that
that's a fact.
she's half horse, half human. She's a man. She's
A dog.
muscular,
Yeah.
a dog, right? So, and her responses were, "You're short."
Yeah, that was my point. Exactly.
We're not on equal ground here. We're not on equal ground because if somebody's going to tag your ass, I need you on top of them immediately, Joe. With reciprocal energy. So it wasn't even like he, as a dark-skinned person, was making these jokes, and she was given space to illuminate how stupid he looked, to be making these archetypes. There was no room for that. It was just, as Tashina said, the role was initially for a fat woman, so they wanted to make fat-phobic jokes. But because she came in, and they had a nice organic banter, it became, oh, well, let's just make these jokes about her at the expense of what else, another social idea about dark-skinned women. So I guess I vacillate back and forth between jonesing is a part of my lived experience. It's a part of Black culture. It's a part of, I think it's what's developed my sense of humor. And also, these jokes were often not funny and dehumanizing. That's where I stand on the Martin discourse at this juncture.
Why we act like we can't make fun of people without being anti-Black? Like, why we can't crack jokes? Like, as somebody who says a lot of, I'm colorful with my language. They say wild things. I make all kind of videos on Learn Naughty Pop, dragging people all the time. You ain't got to say nothing about nobody's skin. You see what I'm saying? Like, what people are specifically defending is the right to make this kind of joke too. They're not even like, it's not like Martin is not coming under fire for lighting up. Everybody was getting lit up the whole show. It's specifically saying that they found themselves unable, whenever confronted with a dark-skinned Black woman, they found themselves unable to joke about anything else. It always had, that is the joke. That is the thing. Like, even so, and I've seen these people twisted. They'd be like, oh, these people must have not been watching Martin. They don't know that Pam used to be getting him and get that and cracking jokes on him too and roasting him too. That have nothing to do with the price of tea in China. It has nothing to do with the price of tea in China and these jokes being colorist. It does not. Also, they'd be like, oh, Martin based Shanae off of his sister. Y'all don't even know that. I don't give a flying fuck about that. Is his sister not also a dark-skinned Black woman? What you mean? You think that I think that somebody who is colorist and that is showing up in what they're writing and what they're doing and how they are cast, who they've casted as their love interest, who versus who the joke is on, who is the dog, who is the beast, who is the whatever. And it doesn't matter that we think Tashina Arnold is fine or that we knew Pam was fine. That doesn't change anything because no one has ever disputed that dark-skinned people are beautiful or that we could be fine or that we could be all these things. What we're saying is you think that by being dark-skinned, that is a joke. That is a negative. That is something to overcome because that's why it had to be like, otherwise it was gonna be this fat woman or whatever. Do you think if she was if Tashina Arnold wasn't absolutely slim, hair wasn't this, hair was wasn't this particular whatever, were they giving her that credit? She had to be extra bad within the framework of constantly. I think what people don't get about perception is, and that's something I've been talking about, when you preclude certain things from your idea of beauty, like dark skin or African or whatever, all these things that we do, it doesn't matter what the person looks like. It doesn't matter what Tashina looked like because think about it. Think about the amount of BDB jokes when that gal had a perm and a weave and hair straight. Where was that? She ain't had natural hair not one time on the show because the idea is the perception that is associated. These things are undesirable. And so to be a dark-skinned woman and you are automatically undesirable and you're automatically these things regardless of whether or not you show up as that regard. So to me, I'm just like, Martin could still be great. We have colorism in our community. We have anti-Blackness throughout our community. Like, we can reckon with that. We can acknowledge, like, yeah, that's what that's rooted in. And that doesn't mean you got to throw Martin away. No one's telling you, cancel the thing. But
I think what gets lost in translation, at least from what I've seen when this is talked about, is I watched maybe like 4 episodes before we came in here, 4 random episodes. And I think a lot of people, when they hear Martin is colorist, like the show, they hear that Martin is colorist. I think the deflect is always like, well, he never said anything about Pam's skin. And the episodes that I watched, he didn't, but it's more about like what he was saying and like the connotation of like saying those things like to a dark-skinned Black woman. Just like he doesn't have to say something about like her complexion for it to be colorist. You know what I mean? I think that's what really gets lost is like they kind of see it as like this like one-to-one transaction. Like, oh, I ain't hear nothing about the skin color, so how is it colors? That makes no sense to me. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That's like what I've been noticing at least.
Mayowa.
So I have like two things to say about this. The first thing I was gonna say is when it comes to Ari Lennox, I feel like the reason that people attacked Ari Lennox is because of how she looks.
Yes.
I feel like if a light-skinned person or a racially ambiguous or a white person was to have had the same critique, I think that they would have been praised for saying that. I think
Yes.
people are mad because Ari Lennox is a dark-skinned woman saying that, and the way that she said it from a emotive space, from a space of like, this hurts my feelings, which when it comes to like joning culture or making fun, like you just saying how you actually feel in an, like, you know, this hurts my feelings because that's like even more demonized. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like people really got angry at her, but that's funny because that's her music. She is a emotive person. She is a crybaby. That's the appeal to her. So I don't know why you wanted her to suddenly say it in a not crybaby way. That's her aura. And then for me, I'm like, you know, I'm a stand-up comedian, and when we talk about like, you know, because this conversation happens so much in like comedy spaces of like, well, this is, you know, this is what's funny. It's pushing the bar, blah blah blah. I'm like, I think it takes a level of creativity to think of comedy outside of tropes of making fun of marginalized people. And I think a lot of people don't want to reach into that level of creativity. I think it's so wild that Martin can make fun of Pam for being dark skinned, but literally all the men on the show are dark skinned. Like the fact that he was very intentional about making sure he casted dark skinned men, because dark skinned men will look after dark skinned men. That is a non-negotiable, right? But when it comes to the dark skinned woman, they had to have someone who literally within a dark skinned arena benefits from desirability, but is still made to feel ugly, which sets the tone that even someone who benefits from texturism, her hair was straightened, right? She had a perm and her hair was, you know, she had healthy perm hair. She actually probably had the same hair texture as Gina. Actually, when you look at they probably had the, you know, but because she's dark skinned, it's like she was called nappy headed. And then, you know, it's this conversation where a lot of times dark skinned people, even if they benefit from texturism, are called nappy headed because it's the aesthetic of being black, the same blackness that all the men on your show look like, and y'all had no issue with that, but you hate it in a woman.
Yeah.
And then you have the audacity to dress up as a girl, as Shanae, and put a wig on and call it progressive, and then later talk about, oh, we was demasculinized. They demasculinized us. You put the wig on your head. Let me relax.
Right. Because you wanted to mock them. Because you think that's big funny. No, you're absolutely right. And the reason why they always have this. The reason why they like to have dark-skinned black men and versus, you know what I mean? They're going to all be dark-skinned black men, but the woman that's the object of the desire, right, Pam, is going to be light-skinned, and all the jokes are going to be in this dark-skinned black woman. It's this idea that masculinity, the epitome of masculinity, you know what I mean, is dark skin. Like that is to be black, whatever, and versus femininity is light. And that's why you see that contrast you could look at every damn black show you think of, all of them or whatever, that's always the pairing, right? So that's why all those jokes about like making her like a man, making her like a beast, despite the fact that we're looking at this incredibly feminine bad bitch on the show, don't matter, because the way Mayowa is saying, that is the perception has nothing to do with nothing. I remember a point I'm making in my Learn Naughty production I'm going to put out this week is when I was a kid, I like my big sister used to tell me that like beauty was determined by what's in style, like who's in style is how she would say it to me. It's like, oh, you're beautiful, but whether or not you just saying it's style to these people yet. And I remember when the song African Queen came out in the Caribbean, that's when all of a sudden, like, put me on the map. All of a sudden they know but that taught me something is like, by being African, by being Nigerian to these people, I was precluded from beauty. They hadn't even considered it. They wasn't even looking at me to consider until they were first given permission to think African could be beautiful. Then and only then. And that's like, you're invisible until people decide that you even fall into. And that's what Pam is. It's like people love to do this thing where they point out, it's like, oh, but Pam was so fine and Pam was this. And like, obviously, as though that negates the fact that this was the experience of what was being put out about like dark-skinned women. Like that's the point, is that it doesn't matter what you are, how beautiful you be, what all these other things you could have going, how much you buy in, you know what I mean? I'm gonna have my hair like this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be as slim as possible, just by virtue of being this is this. And to what Mayowa was saying, is like, yeah, Ari Lennox is a perfect example of that, even in herself. Ari Lennox is a beautiful gal who's beautiful, slim, has become even smaller, has changed her aesthetic some to like the more bad bitch or whatever kind of archetype, and so she can never open her mouth. If she's to what Mayowa was saying, if like Doja Cat or Lotto had said that, they would be appreciating the fact that it was this light-skinned gal or whatever saying that, like, oh yeah, look at you with some good politics on you. But because Ari Lennox says it, the same kind of vitriol that like is written into the dialogue of like, oh, Martin, this is how you engage with the dark-skinned best friend for no reason. This kind of hostility is the way that we engage with Ari Lennox. Every time Ari Lennox says something, including shit that we have already litigated as a culture and come to the conclusion that she's correct, I'm confident. I talked about this on the Griot 5 years ago and this wasn't controversial. But Ari Lennox said it and it was like, you know what I mean? I was niggas
So
shooting at her that I was blown away. I was like, what'd she say? Other than the sky is blue.
I feel like, okay, so no, that's definitely a good point. I feel like we don't like when people who are personally affected by a thing come out and say that they're personally affected by a thing, because it requires you to see them as someone who has been harmed, right? As a part of a group of people who are due atonement, that you have to reconcile with that. When it's someone from an outside group, it's like, well, here's this person who is outside just like me for the most part. And if they could do it, maybe I could do it. Or also they want to angelify someone who is light skinned. They already want to demonize someone who is dark skinned. So there's definitely something there. But I also wanted to say that like colorism obviously doesn't, expound on your point, Olay, that colorism doesn't work for men and women the same, right? And so it makes so much sense why Pam wasn't responding to expose the blatant colorism of his statements, because the ways that we understand dark skin is that it is the height of masculinity in the Black community, that they are, well, it's, it's a narrow box, right? That dark skinned people are, specifically men, are supposed to be hyper masculine. And so Martin had a good job. I think he had his own radio show on the show.
Then the TV access, public access talk show after that.
Right. Yeah. So he was doing well in capitalism. He had a partner who was deemed desirable, particularly in the Black community, but across many communities, because Tashina is not just light skinned. That lady is fair skinned. And so we just have to say that as well. So the only way she could take him down a peg is the fact that he was a shorter man, because, people like tall, dark, and handsome. Yeah. But I did want to ask you this question. Now, you just told me how to pronounce your name, and I don't want to miss it. Mayowa. Forgive me. Hands up. Don't shoot. I'm unarmed. So I wanted to know about like how you navigate your comedy. Is it like rooted in exposing like deleterious social structures, or like, because I'm just curious, because you're saying that like it requires a certain level of creativity to talk about things that are not the low hanging fruit. So how do you construct your comedy in a way that is perhaps transgressive, that is that you deem as a more elevated creative expression?
Okay, I will answer this, but I wanted to check that Aaliyah, like, I don't know if you want to say something before because I don't want to take
I'm just going to say that I was already like working on a video about colorism. So it was kind of funny when you messaged me. Because I also thought the Martin colorism stuff had already been settled like years ago. Like I remember just watching so many video essays of people talking about it. I was like, oh, I mean, everybody seemed to be in agreement at the time. And then when I saw this, I saw this post where somebody was like, this is just people being insecure, basically. And like people were commenting things like, oh, people are just trying to profit off of victimhood or some shit like that. And I don't know, that's something that I notice anytime this conversation comes up, is it's always like, if you're dark and you're complaining about this stuff, you get accused of just being insecure. And it's like, that's on you. Like that insecurity didn't come from anywhere. It's just, that's on you. Like you're a bad person for not being confident enough to not be offended by what happened on Martin or something. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So in regards to the comedy, I feel like, so when I like look at someone like Martin in general and I think of his comedy, or a lot of comedians, it's like so much outside. Like it's always like look and it's always the same tropes. It's always fat people, it's always dark-skinned women, it's always Black women, it's always trans people, queer people, and it's like it never shifts. Like I'm talking about, you can go 50 years back, see stand-up comedy, it's the same thing because this is profitable. But it's like rarely I've never heard a dark-skinned man do comedy talk about the insecurities he felt being dark-skinned. I've never heard a dark skinned man do comedy talk about how he was maybe bleaching his skin at 14, 15, trying to be, it's just like, I feel like there's this thing of like, constantly looking out, and like that is always expected. And then whenever like Black women do comedy or queer people do comedy, they expect you to degrade yourself. Like I remember one time I did comedy, this guy was like, I like it, but like you seem too like confident of yourself. Why don't you make fun of yourself some more? And I'm like, why? That's what you want to see. You want me to make fun of Black women, so it also fuels the same machine of comedy only is making fun of Black women. And I was saying that I think it's so wild that like Black women are I live in Atlanta, so we have a lot of Black people. And Black women doing comedy is the least of all of the groups. And I'm like, but everyone makes fun of Black women. And so it's just like this idea that like comedy is literally gatekeeping the most marginalized people out of it to continue for them to find it funny. Yeah. So I think that the creativity comes when you think of like, what is comedy outside of these things? And there's so much comedy outside. Like there's so much I feel like if you have an analysis, then to me, that's when like the comedy really becomes sweet with it, because it's like you're able to actually think of how to tell a joke without it being punching. You can punch up. Why don't y'all talk about white men? Like I'm talking about really critically talking about it. A lot of comedians would be like, oh yeah,
we
white
love
men.
Punching up.
A lot of people would be like, oh yeah, white men, they're like, they're boring, or their comedy's so safe. Where's the risky comedy punching up? Where is that riskiness? Like, and that's the thing that people don't want to do. And that is what Ari Lennox did, but not in a funny way. Right. Ari Lennox was like, looking back on my childhood, I realized that you guys were dehumanizing her, and she was actually very pretty. So she was going up to be like, hey, you as a Black man, that was rude what you did to her. And you guys were like, shut up. Don't ever speak. Don't speak out, because that was a bold example of punching up.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Okay. So, two things, like a personal anecdote and then like a larger thing that I think is happening here. One, okay, let me just make it plain. Okay. Well, no, actually, I'll start with the larger thing and then go with the personal anecdote. I feel like largely, a lot of people are experiencing empathy fatigue or like conscious exhaustion, and I think that a piece of that is fair. Like, right, and now in history, we have access to so many different types of global atrocities, international and domestic. We are hyper aware because of the amount of information that we're consuming about not just isms and phobias, but all of the extreme lengths of white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist, heteronormative, cisnormative patriarchy, right? And so it can be very draining, not necessarily to be called up, but it can be draining to engage with all of that traumatizing material. And then for people within a given group, and this is not exclusive to colorism, I'm broadening the conversation a bit. For people within a given group to not have a consensus on what the appropriate response, what the appropriate language is to address a certain group, whether it's fat phobia and fat people saying that like fat is just a descriptor and it is not a pejorative, so it's perfectly fine. Some dark skinned people like being called chocolate. They view it as I know I do personally. I remember my Jamaican aunt Navlet used to call me chocolate, and I grew up in a colorist household where my mom never had a positive thing to say about my skin tone. Mm-hmm. So when I was with my dark skinned aunt Navlet with all of her dark skinned kids, and she said my chocolate baby, bitch, I felt close to 2 inches from Jesus. But I know other dark-skinned people don't feel that way. And the same is true for any other group who experiences an ism or phobia. Some gay people are fine with the girl saying punk, as long as you're in community. You're a cag, you're one of the girls. We know that your politic as a cis woman is like, we ride together, we die together. So I don't mind you saying it. Other girls don't. So everything, there's so much discourse, and not everybody is not only well-read, but not everybody just holds the same opinion within a given group about how best to navigate these isms and phobias. So it can be exhausting trying to figure out, where should my empathy be? How do I respond? What is appropriate in this context for this specific ism and this specific phobia? Because 5 dark-skinned people, 5 fat women, 5 women of different races or of the same race but different experiences have told me different things, and each from a person-to-person perspective may seem valid. I remember I was listening. Now, I don't agree with the next thing that I'm about to say, but I'm going to tell you because this is what the light brights say very often. Tashina was saying that when they were filming Martin, that there were women, and I believe she meant Black women, who would come and watch the show live, and when Tisha, when Tisha would come on the screen, they would boo, right? And she was essentially saying that there were Black women who didn't want Tisha to have the man. They wanted Tashina to have the life that Tisha had. And she was like, all Black women, you know, you get it for not being Black enough. You get it for being too Black. And so I want to say expressly here, I do not believe in reverse colorism because I've read a book or three. But I do understand that I understand that there are people's lived individual experiences that make them feel badly about themselves, right? And then there are societal experiences that reinforce from a legal perspective, an economic perspective, who's granted access to certain, just like wealth, access to resources, right? We know that what is the law that was passed about the Crown Act? What was that? 2022?
Yeah,
There's been 20 minutes. It's been 20 minutes. And they still out here up and cutting up and all of the things, right? So I understand the ways in which colorism is something that can only be weaponized against dark-skinned people systemically, right? But it doesn't mean that actually, I'm not going to be coupled for light brights here. I'm just saying everybody has their own lived experience and they feel true to that thing. So I think that there is an exhaustion with navigating that. Now, as an additional point, because I know y'all probably have something to say to that. Additionally, I want to say that I grew up in an urban, so I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey with brown skin, dark skin. Well, come on. Where you from?
No.
Oh, okay. N-O-R-K. He's
yes,
definitely
sir.
from Newark. And not Newark. No, but I remember at the lunch table, it's everybody's getting Jones doing. I remember during fire drills, they cut off the lights and it's Herbie smile so we can see where you are. Right. And so it's everybody. I was Jones on for being dark, for being feminine, for all the things. And I Jones back. I remember we were very fat phobic to my sister, who was not big at the time. She is in a larger body now, but we were very fat phobic. We as a family, my family was very fat phobic to my sister. My family was very colorist to me, including my dark skinned father. And so sometimes that shit was funny, even when it was directed at me. And this is my personal experience. I'm saying that sometimes when the girls laughed at me, I Jones back. And I could find humor in people exaggerating, like, of course you can see me with the lights off. But I could find humor in the exaggeration. I could depersonalize it, individual, that's why this is anecdotal. And so I think that my benchmark or the range of comedy that I engage with, last thing too, is a bit wider. The last thing I'll say is I love Sex and the City. I'm watching Sex and the City and they're talking about T-girls, right? They're talking about trans people using a derogatory term against trans people. They're talking about a feminine man who was heterosexual and refer to him as a gay straight man. There was a lot of homophobia and transphobia in that show. Still love that show down. Like you said initially, Olay, things can be problematic. You can see, I may chuckle and then be like, oh, that was fucked up, and then move on. I don't know. That was a lot of different points all over the place.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. But the thing is, it doesn't move on because it's not just, you see the way we're not just defending, we're not defending in the word, but we're not just explaining what happened in Martin or how on the basis of these were these colorist jokes that were made and this happened in the show and we want to keep it, but it's being tied to this larger aspect of, well, this is what happens in our community, this is how we crack jokes and we blah 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 blah, and thus it's in some way some kind of cultural tradition we should keep. But the reality is, yes, it happens in our community because it's anti-Blackness. So that's what it is. It's anti-Blackness and it was fed to us. And when you think about it, I understand like empathy fatigue. I agree. I understand that. I think that's legitimate. I get all of that. I understand that people be tired, this and the next thing. However, the Black community has been violently resistant to discussion, to rectifying colorism and addressing colorism long before we were tired of empathy. Long before this era, this is a consistent thing. And I find it crazy that it's almost like Black people have forgotten who Black people are and what Black people look like. And I say that to say, when we talk about colorism is treated as though it's this issue, like, you know, when people be like, trans people are 1% of the population, there's only men, this many gay people, the majority of Black people are dark skinned. So we want to continue up we are fighting to the death to maintain this, like, ain't nobody saying you can't crack jokes on this. saying you can't tan it. You could, there are a million ways you could crack jokes on your friends and this, them, and this and the next day without feeding into anti-Blackness. Like, and having experienced it before and finding a way to retaliate. Listen, people have said all kind of crazy things to me, and of course I can light your ass up back. That ain't gonna do with the price of tea in China, and it has nothing to do with the long term, how you feel and how the larger society. It doesn't matter really if the occasional individual here and there makes it out of their dark skin struggle of how they're being treated, you know what I mean, and they find the joy in whatever. It's the majority, and there's also a certain level of like, I think we have to consider when we think about the whole and think about how impacted or how negatively or positively impacted the things, we have to consider where we stand now, not just like who we were as the little like the little kid that was being made fun of that figured out how to deal with or whatever, but how something shows up and how you feel about it today has a lot to do with who you are still. And I think there are lots of ways by being, we are dark-skinned content creators with a platform and all this stuff, whatever, that you could be validated and go through life and know you're beautiful and rise above and XYZ. Just like Tashina Arnold knew she was the punch and joke, but because she was on that show, getting a job, getting paid, Tisha Campbell is her best friend in real life, and she has multiple different reasons why she has to explain that in a way that's sympathetic to Tisha Campbell. That's what's going on there. You know what I mean? Those are people with different things that are, you know what I mean, competing in terms of how they want to see it. And as far as the I think that we can have Martin. No one's saying you can't have Martin, and no one's saying, I'm not even saying that there isn't a place for, I've said this in my Learn Naughty production about virtue mirroring. I think I have an appreciation for media that reflects the times or whatever that were happening because we're able to deconstruct it like this. My problem is people's resistance to deconstructing it. I rented the DVDs to Martin in college like everybody. I think the Martin aesthetic is fire. I think Martin is a classic. I like everybody that played Martin XYZ, but that does not mean there aren't real things to consider. And people have this thing, they have a serious aversion and to insecurity, to what we were talking about, Leah. You made a really good point about whenever a person who is actually harmed by this comes out, people scold them like insecurity. But something I think Deshaun puts forward in Belly of the Beast is looking at insecurity as like a political, insecurity is political in the sense that insecurity is proof of a response to a societal, people being insecure. If you feel like it's insecure, people are insecure about their dark skin, that is the result of racism and colorism in the structure. It is not a personal failure. It is a societal failure. It is a response to something like that. And so we need to, instead of seeing this as, oh, you're so upset whenever a dark skinned person brings this to the forefront, is a reflection of the fact of how many dark skinned people continue to bring it to the forefront. And why is that? You know what I mean? Because that's what they're living in their experience. And so it's like, is what I mostly see too is so funny because I see a lot of dark-skinned men. I see a lot of dark-skinned men, a lot of non-Black people, and a lot of dark-skinned men, and a lot of light-skinned gals and regular whatever being like, hey, y'all, whatever, or people who just never thought critically about this. But the average dark-skinned person I know, even like my sister doing, loves Martin. She loved Martin, and she loves Shanae. She thought Shanae was hilarious. But if I say to her, hey, doing, you notice that's like Colorist? She's yeah, you know, I still love Martin. I still think that's funny. But yeah, you know, it's that simple. Like you're like,
but then what? Because I feel like, okay,
so we don't have to do that. Do you think
we don't have to do what?
Do we think Martin wouldn't have been good if Pam, if he hadn't made his Beady Beads jokes? Like, do we think if he took Shanae out of Martin and we didn't make any dark skin jokes about Pam, would the show still have been iconic? I want the answer to that. And then my second question to if it's not, what does that say? What does that say about our media or anything great if it depends and relies on colorism?
No, I think it still would have been good. Sorry. I think it still would have been good. I guess I see comedy as one of two things. In the context that we exist, everybody is socialized and indoctrinated in the white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist, name it all, right? So I see comedy as either exposing those social structures or engaging in that. And I would celebrate a world that moves in the direction of comedy exclusively being comedy that exposes those social structures. I just guess my engagement with reality on Black people of a variety of different academic and intellectual levels who have different diets for different things, I think everybody's going to make different concessions. And I guess I've become okay with that. I have so many family members who are still, and even outside of the context of comedy, who are still, they love my homophobic aunts and uncles, right? And they still around them. They make these jokes. And then even when they're not joking, they dead serious, right? And people are like, you know what? That's just auntie. That's just grandma. You got to go with it. I don't agree with what she's saying, but they love them. And guess what? What I say, what next is like, they still engage. They're still in community, and they still, not that they should, but I guess I'm a bit pessimistic in this regard. That like, I would love, like I said, I would love, it's idealistic to live in a world where the only comedy that is promoted, that exists, is comedy that exposes the deleterious effects of these social structures. I just don't believe that that will continue to be. And everybody has a different benchmark of what's problematic to them. And everybody is laughing at and continuing to recreate those things.
Whether you're engaging or exposing it, if the larger culture, if the Black community will not acknowledge it for what it is, its impact is harmful. Like even whether or not, I don't truly give a shit, but I know that it wasn't meant to expose. We know that, because if it was meant to expose this kind of thing, there wouldn't be this kind of resistance to acknowledging it. But at the end of the day, if we just continue, if we make jokes, we write characters, we do things, and we advance, or you're opening it, broadening it to just beyond comedy and media, but comedy in terms of how we interact with each other. If we continue to maintain structures of like, yeah, this is okay, like, could you do this? Make these jokes. That's funny. It's just jokes. We should just love on whatever. But no one wants to it cannot even be named as what it is, let alone that it causes harm. Then it's like, what is it other than just ultimately saying, shut up and take it. Oh, they love you anyway. Like, oh, your mommy beats you, but she loves you. Oh, they say that to you, whatever, but they love you. All the while, you're not feeling no love. You're not experiencing no love. Like, there's a reason when you say, oh, I felt so being called the chocolate, like, oh, my chocolate baby. That felt some way to you. That only feels that way to you because of a society that ultimately or a household or whatever that's making it feel like shit. So what happens? We constantly just make everybody feel like shit and then say, yeah, but we love you, baby.
I feel like also too, people don't really realize that colorism is abusive the same way that homophobia is, same way transphobia is. So even when you say what's next, it's like, well, what's next after abuse in general, right? Like but the question isn't to figure out what is necessarily next. I feel like the thing is also just, since we're in a more conservative time, I think people are trying to loosen the threads of work that was done previously. So I think that, as you said, you wrote this about colorism a while ago, people are trying to loosen the threads and rewrite it to where it goes right back to the status quo of like, let's continue this, let's ramp this up. This is a sign, being colorist is like a sign of like openly colorist means that your own community has accepted that it is good to abuse you right now. You are going to, because we're already Black people are getting abused. So like we need to pick a target, fat, trans, like we need to hunker down and like start attacking people. And even when it comes to like the whole, I remember you saying like, everybody gets lashes, but like not all lashing is the same. Do you know what I mean? Some people are getting double lashes, some people are getting triple lashes, and like some people have only been lashed down on. Even when we talk about anti-fatness, like even for myself, I grew up, I was made fun of for my hair and for being dark skinned, right? But I saw dark skinned fat girls, and there's no amount that I went through. I did not receive the same lashing they did. That is a completely different category of lashing than what I could ever receive. So when we even talk about this whole concept of empathy fatigue, I don't believe in it, because whose empathy is getting tired, right? So the fat girl who's had to always be empathetic to listen to everyone's perspective, the dark skinned girl who had to listen to 16 light skinned women crying about being called a banana in 3rd grade, all of us who have had to listen to all this stuff for so long, we can't say we're empathetically tired. We can't say, when they were attacking Ari Lennox, I can't say I'm empathetically tired of y'all attacking. And why is empathy the thing that y'all get tired of and not attacking? How are y'all more tired of feeling sad about something than you are about attacking people for speaking out against their own experiences? Mind you, Ari didn't do nothing radical. She spoke about what she saw, and that's considered radical. She didn't attack it. She wasn't like, you know what, Martin was colorist to Pam and Gina. She didn't say that. She just said, I didn't like how this one girl was treated. And y'all were already, once again, doing that thing where you're defending men and light-skinned people, talking about Gina also received backlash too. She was called big head. Oh no, not a light-skinned big head. Like, oh no, and this is what I'm talking about. She was called a wolf. She was called nappy-headed. She was called unhuman. And Gina was called a big-headed light-skinned girl. That's what I'm talking about. The lashing is not the same. And Pam, dark skin, skinny, desirable, all that was called all them things. What about all these people here that's just getting all nonstop lashings? So this whole thing of like, I don't believe there's any empathy fatigue. I think people just don't want to hear you talk, and they're trying to use weaponized language to get you to shut up. Just be like, don't talk about it no more.
Okay, so a couple of things. Hold on. Now, let me be clear about what I am saying and what I'm not saying. What I am saying is what is. What is the consequence of existing in a white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist, heteronormative patriarchy? And then I'm going to get to the hierarchy and the stratified system of who is experiencing attack the most. But first, the reality of what is that I see comedy, and this is my opinion, right? And again, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. I see comedy as either existing, as we exist in this framework, either existing because I see it trying to expose a truth or build upon a trope. Right? So it's either existing to expose these social structures and constructs or engage in that harmful activity. It's one of the two. Like either you are saying something fatphobic or you're talking about fat phobia, right? Whether it's a personal experience, whether you're punching, and now you can punch up, but that's exposing. You can punch down, that's engaging, right? That's the way I see it. And what I'm saying is I feel like a lot of times in academic spaces, we're engaging in theory. I appreciate your point, my good sister, about how people, and I think because it's a reality, about how people are undoing the progress made by Black feminist theorists, by, activists, artivists, who have been trying to move culture in a just more human direction. I won't even say left, just a more human direction so that we can see people as intersectional identities who are experiencing oppression that is interconnected. But what I also think is true, damn, I lost my train of thought and I was on some shit. No. What I also think is true about people experiencing, what was I going to say?
Look at God.
Damn. No, because I'm cooking with hot grease. I'm cooking with hot grease. What I was, okay, let me move to the second point about people being punched down.
Devil's advocacy is come here.
No. Because it's actually not, the empathy fatigue. I definitely think people should be more tired of engaging in a white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, but I think that has become normal, right? We have been socialized and there are those of us who, this is what I was talking about, the hierarchy of education and everybody having different diets for different things, whatever. That's become normal. It's become, and I'm not saying that normal is good. I'm saying normal is what is. I'm actually condemning the normative structures that are harmful to various different people, more harmful to those who are experiencing interconnected disenfranchisement, et cetera, et cetera. But these people, while people should be more tired and want to resist against these structures, there isn't enough suggesting that they should. People have been normalized, have been like socialized into an idea that like, this just is what it is. And that's what I was saying. Oh, this is my point about theory. Thank you, Jesus, for bringing it all back. I feel like in academic spaces, we get so caught up in theory. And this is why I said your point is important. But I feel like what I like to hear is, okay, so what happens? When I say what's next, I mean, how do we move from theory to praxis, right? And if that is a world where we are trying to move comedy in a direction where it's just exclusively people exposing the deleterious impacts of these social structures, I'm all for that. I'm just saying I don't believe that is possible right now. Maybe that's my pessimism.
I don't even think
because my last thing is, it was a point of like, I just want people to acknowledge it, that it's just that it's wrong. And of course it's wrong. Of course we need to acknowledge it. I'm just saying in academic spaces, I think we become hyper fixated on our sole responsibility is to get people to acknowledge it and not to provide people with praxis of what comes next.
I love you, Fran. I love you with all my heart and soul. You know I do. In this particular instance, this is not one of the times. There are times we asking them to do a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of academia and a lot of application and yada, yada, yada. This time, this ain't even like a complicated, it's not even just acknowledge it. Stop making anti-Black ass jokes at the expense of what the majority of look like. We are defending, right? No, let me hear you. This is 2025. If we are not past 1990s level colorism, that's what we're defending here. I could see if we were having a more nuanced discussion about some media of today. We are talking 90s beads colorism and saying, let's chill on that. Like, this isn't even like, I'm not making a larger. I love stand-up comedy. And I am a Caribbean problematic in my own right in terms of what I like to laugh and joke at or whatever, right? X, Y, Z. I'm big on you could keep your media. As long as you are having your analysis, acknowledging what it is, X, Y, Z live. You know, Herbie, I am not trying to take stand-up comedy from everybody. And I'm not even trying to say you can't laugh at nobody. You can't punch down ever. You can't whatever. But I'm saying there is a general problem. And there's a general problem, not even just with having this kind of 90s outright colorism or whatever in media. It's not even just that. It's the bigger problem is that in 2025, what does it say about us as a community and where we've advanced, that if in 2025 we still cannot acknowledge 90s colorism as bad, don't even want to acknowledge it what it is. You say, so what you saying, Herbie, in our academic spaces, like, oh, we just want, I don't just want to just acknowledge, I want to stop doing it. But I'm saying the scarier thing is that won't even acknowledge it. Like to what you were saying, like, oh yeah, we could get them to do that. They're not. That's what I'm saying. I've watched multiple videos because I'm on Call Creators. I know
that was actually my point.
Multiple videos from this week. Oh, it's just, this is just reducing it to just cracking jokes. And cracking jokes is a whole different thing. Essentially, you could have your entire infrastructure of cracking jokes and rah-da-da-da-da-da. That's entirely different than you fighting for your right to make 90s colorist jokes and saying the sensitive and treating it as insecurity when really what it is a political response to a racist and colorist society that is so anti-Black. They make us wield it against not only our own, but not in a minority amongst us. That's what the majority of us look like. I didn't work hard for this. I didn't try for this panel to be dark skinned. That's how you throw a rock and you land on a dark skin. That's what we look like.
Right.
That's my point. So that's all.
No, I mean, I've agreed with all of that. I think that there's like, this is like what it, okay, I agree with everything that you said, unequivocally, unabashedly. What I'm saying is these ideas are in competition, and let me explain. We're saying I love Martin. I'm not saying you don't have to like Martin. I'm saying that I like Martin, but Martin is rife with the same kind of 90s, the 90s colorism and fat phobia and all of the things. So what is it that, like, if you're saying that Martin would not have been, if the question is, would Martin still have been good if it wasn't anti-Black and colorist, and people say no, then that's a problem, right? It exposes that people, what does it say about our media landscape? That people feel that it is necessary for Martin to exist. But it is necessarily true that Martin does not exist without 90s colorism. It is inextricably linked to the fabric of that show. So how do you say I love Martin and then also say that so first of all, I think that the saying I love Martin reveals that you must also like the thing that is inextricably linked to the fabric of the show. And also, I do believe that it is important for people to acknowledge it. I'll say that 1,000 times over and over again. I'm just saying that people, the reason why I was saying colorism is a real thing that exists and we experience it in real life, right? It's not just an academic theory, but the ways in which often, not just you or I independently, but the way it's often discussed by people who are of a different strata in terms of the way in which that we speak, people who are in different landscapes are not trying to hear that. I also say people make different concessions. I brought about how people engage with homophobia and still are in community and make those jokes. I'm just saying, when I say what's next, I'm like, what does it look like for people who are so used to existing at the bottom of the hierarchy or existing in contexts where this is, I just don't see a world where this thing is not replicated. And I acknowledge that that's a pessimistic worldview, but I just don't want it to be my argument to be contorted into something that it's not. I think that if we're saying that we love Martin, we are unequivocally saying, because we've all agreed here, that colorism is embedded in the fabric of that show. So to say I love Martin means that you can't also say that you're not engaging with that colorism. And I understand we should leave it where it's at. I just don't know if are committed to that. TM, Universal are committed to that. So that's why I was asking about the practice. What's next?
I think, first of all, let me just be clear. I'm not no Martin head. I mean, I've watched all of Martin. I mean, I don't love Martin. I think Martin's okay. It never moved me like that. But what I do think you can appreciate about it, at least from my perspective, I do think you can recognize something for what it is, like, or different negative aspects of it and still appreciate different things. I think Martin had iconic fashion. I think Martin had, like, Martin's aesthetic and vibe is replicated to this day. It's woven into our mind as a certain kind of 90s Black look. I like, you know what I mean? Generally, these characters that were created, I liked seeing Martin be hosting a radio show that was an unconventional. There are a bunch of different things that you could say that you like about it. And let me be clear. Again, to reiterate what my original thesis is, my problem is not even in Martin having this, and my problem is not even in people making media that incorporates this, because like I said, I don't subscribe to virtue mirroring, and I think there's value in being able to look at media like this and deconstruct this in analysis and be able to point to people in society and say how something works. So my problem is not with Martin having it. My problem is with people being so resistant to acknowledging that that was it, because in their mind, that means that they have to throw away Martin and that they cannot do this in real life why they interpreted it as a threat to their ability to make fun of dark-skinned people in real life. That's my problem, is that they were
I agree.
defensive because they saw it as, look at these insecure dark-skinned people not allowing us to do something that is just supposed to be funny and a part of how that we communicate in real life. People's defense to Martin went way past Martin. For me, it's not about Martin. It's not about attacking Martin or changing anything about Martin or anything like that. We should be able to look at Martin and say, hey, you remember I was giving it up in the 90s? But it's scarier that don't want you to see it like that because they want to give it up like that in 2025 in real life. They want to still be making them kind of jokes and have nobody attach colorism to it. So to me, it's not so much about the media. I'm not so much about stifling anybody's ability to represent. These are characters or whatever have you. I would respect it more. And now if we were talking about Martin and stuff like that, I think it would be dope if a nigga like Martin himself would acknowledge that. Like, imagine how much, like, yeah, I wrote that. You're like, so we could analyze it. We could do whatever, all these different things. You create different characters, you create different media, but that's not what was being it wasn't what was happening. In real life, that's what we consider desirable. We know how to restraining order go by season 5. We know Martin, like we know what happened, like why she got the role she got. Those were very much so indicative of just how they see the world. The light-skinned gals get to be the love interest or whatever have you. And I think that exists in our real life. So I think there's value to us being able to look at our media landscape and point it out. So I'm not saying Martin shouldn't have that. I'm saying you should not be so defensive about Martin because you want to be colorist in real life. That's my thesis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
I feel
too.
like
I'm sorry. You go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay. I was just gonna say, like, to your point, I do think it is important to just acknowledge, like you said, that one of my favorite jokes in Eddie Murphy Raw is when he talks about getting a call from Bill Cosby and he's telling him like you can't get up there and curse all the damn, like, why are you saying all those bad words? You can't say and then Eddie Murphy just says, I didn't like walk on stage, curse and leave. Like, I like told some jokes in between there. And I think it's important to, like, it's like like I said, I watched 4 episodes before coming in here, 4 random ones from all different parts of the show, different seasons. Pam was there maybe 20 seconds per episode in the ones I saw. I probably just got like a crazy batch, honestly. I watched Martin a lot growing up and still do. So, like, obviously there's episodes where Pam is like a heavier focus and I'm sure the jokes outweigh. But you know what I'm saying? Like, at its core, Martin is like a black love story between Martin and Gina. Now I got my own thoughts about like how Martin is probably the worst black friend like ever written for television. Black friend, black partner. Like, he is like literally the worst. I watched him like try to propose to Gina. He's like, fine, Gina. Damn, I'll marry you. You happy? It's like the craziest shit ever. But yeah, and I think when you acknowledge these things, it kind of and have these conversations, especially in front of other black creatives that are going to go and make their own things. Eventually, it kind of turns into like, okay, well, how do I take everything from this that still works and like is still like what did they do right here and what can be done differently, so that the media isn't just like feeding into itself and like, you know what I'm saying, it's just we're still telling the same jokes in 2025. How do we evolve if we want to make two characters like kind of be like frenemies and enemies, like, and we want to make them joke about each other? Like, let's find some more creative ways to tell these jokes. Like, let's find different like attributes or like maybe personality traits, what they got on, like shit like that. When I watched those episodes, like I said, Pam was probably there for like 20, 30 seconds in the ones that I was watching. But sure enough, it was the same damn jokes every single time. Like, it was like, it wasn't, bro ain't switch it up once. Like, it was still BDB. It was still, here go the family pet. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was always the same exact thing. And like you said, like everybody said, it's Pam's like, oh, small wonder. Big ears. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like those two. Yeah. She had 2 things. Every single time she had 2 things. Yeah, I don't know. I think I didn't really think about it, until I was like a teenager. But yeah, the when you really like, especially if you watch it like back to back, like it's like this, it's not there's not even like any variety in it. It was almost like a formula to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, so I am a Martin hater. I'll hold that one very proudly. Because, you know, if you guys can tell I'm a sensitive adult, so you can only imagine how sensitive I was as a kid. And, you know, I remember literally feeling physically like this is like hurting me watching this. I did watch it, but I just felt, and I remember there was this girl in my class, her name was Shaniqua. And when Martin would do the Shanae part, people would call her Shaniqua because she was dark skinned as well. And I just watched her like shrink herself because of the fact that her name was so similar. Like all the African American names are so pretty. They started to demonize because, oh, you're like Shaniqua, so Shanae. You know, all those things were considered like unprofessional and ghetto. And I feel like those stereotypes really hyped it up and exacerbated those things already existing. And I was, you know, I feel like the hardest part to me with colorism is the fact that you can't rely on other dark skinned people to see your point of view. Like, I feel like, you know, and that's why I think it's such a mind fuck about it, because it's like, you can talk about racism and I'll like, if I experience racism and I look to another Black person, they're going to be like, yeah, like that was racism. But with
unless it's Candace Owens.
Right. You know what I mean? But for the most part, like most people will be able to kind of see it. But with colorism, it's like, it is literally like the amount of people who understand it is like, so is you don't know what you're going to get. And I think a lot of these things come from films like this and how it programs your mind. I feel like, you know, with Martin and Pam and Gina, what I took away from that as a kid was my role as a dark skinned friend is to be a supporting act to a light skinned girl. I don't think that's what I was saying, but it was almost like I was like, okay, yeah, I will be the, I've even made comments like that with my friend who was colorist. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm like the Pam, you're like the Gina. You know what I mean? Just this dynamic where I'm slightly always going to be under you, and how even in romantic dating, she can have partners who can make fun of me and I am still going to be around because it's friendship, right? So these are the things that as a young girl, it's getting into my mind that, oh, that's my role. My role is to be a supporting friend to someone else. And so then what ends up happening in colorism is a lot of dark skinned women are programmed to defend light skinned girls, not like intensely. It doesn't matter if they're harming other dark skinned people. It's almost like they're trained to be the guard dog, which is so ironic because Martin would literally call Gina a dog and a guard dog all the time. I remember one time there was like a time where he was trying to be romantic with Gina, and Pam was like, that's not, and he's like, why are you a guard dog? You know, almost as if you're jealous of this dynamic. And I think, Aaliyah, you were mentioning about how people were saying that, oh, it's a form of jealousy when you bring it up or you're insecure. It's like, I think that what people want to say is, you, with how you look, you should be insecure. I feel like when Ari Lennox spoke up, they were like, with how you're positioned in this world, you should be insecure about speaking the way you are. What makes you think that you should be able to, you know, and that's what they're calling out. They're like, your disposition should not give you any kind of confidence to see the reality as it is. So a lot of dark skinned girls just end up accepting that as normal, and then becoming guard dogs to enforce colorism to help be like, no. Because the amount of dark skin when I saw online, they were like, no, it's not colorist. I'm like, relax. Like, you can allow yourself to, I feel like Black people have a deep fear of being a victim. And it becomes even more extreme the farther down you go. Like, I think that people are like, I don't want to accept that I was a victim of colorism in that, or I was a victim at some point of being in this dynamic, or see that Pam was a victim in that dynamic. Like, you could literally see the triangulation. It was literally in the most stereotypically triangular. Mind you, Pam was dating that other guy, and like that was
Tommy Strong.
But it was still Tommy. But it was still like Tommy the triangulation Strong, of the three, because her role was needed to be the annoyance for their love to seem stronger, for their relationship to seem more solid. It's so funny because it's like she had to exist there to stand on top of, right? And I think with colorism, a lot of people have to stand, like, you have to be dark skinned and ugly for me to feel beautiful, for me to be light skinned and pretty. Those two things have to, and a lot of people cannot exist if they're not realizing that they're standing on somebody else. And that's also what comedy is rooted in. A lot of people cannot do jokes if it's not standing on somebody else, because that is how they feel confident. That is how they feel strong. I have to shit on you, because if not, who am I? And that's my whole question with everything. Who are you? To this day, with everything with Martin, who are you? With all the jokes I've seen your stand-up, I've been seeing comedians and I'm like looking like, who are you? I don't know you. I know what you find funny, but I don't know you.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. So I think that illuminated something that I was thinking about, like that different people make different concessions. You saying that you are a Martin hater, right? And that you haven't been able to experience like where there's like agreement on colorism. I don't know. I feel like this is true across isms and phobias. I don't know if it's exclusive to colorism, because but this is also me fresh off of watching Amanda Seales' Jubilee episode, and I'm seeing just not be able to understand basic basic
But
what is basically
Amanda
racist.
also can't understand colorism either, though. Like Amanda has even though Amanda with all that stuff that she had, she also still has a past of being colorist with other or silencing people who are speaking on colorism. So even with all of that, and I also feel like within colorism, gender. A lot of men cannot empathize. We're both dark skinned. We'll be the same complete. Like that is what I mean. Like it is isolating in that experience where it's like there is no understanding that we can exist together.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
Well, and I'm 100% agreeing with it. I'm just saying I'm not certain that it's exclusive to colorism, just because I feel like there's a similar thing with misogyny. Not all women, because of the ways that just the level of propaganda, like propagandizing that happens with different isms and phobias. Like a lot of people don't agree across what's misogynistic, across what's just different ideologies.
But when you think about it, what makes I do think you're right. There's always going to be exceptions. There's always going to be like baffling among us all on any topic, right? Like it's going to show up other places. But I do think with colorism was more women. Yes, lots of women are agents of patriarchy and misogyny and do not understand misogyny. But lots of women understand and regularly engage in and discuss the ways and saying shit. They do get it. In fact, they might not get it when you walk them to the conclusion in the word, but they understand that colorism gets tricky. You surrounded, I'm telling you, you be around gals and they be blowing your mother mind around you. Like,
I guess that's not been my experience. Everybody who's in my life who's dark skinned and people who are light skinned, well, no, I can't speak for the light brights. I don't have too many light skinned friends. Unfortunately, I don't know. But all the dark skinned people in my life, we recognize colorism. But neither here nor there. The point that I wanted to make is that like everybody makes different concessions. And this was the larger point or the original point that you were making about you being a Martin hater and some people being a Martin lover, even though it's incredibly problematic. And I think that this was another point that I was making about like me saying like, oh yeah, I still watch Sex and the City, despite the fact that the gay best friend was used as a trope and an object and they were transphobic and homophobic throughout the whole show. I feel like there are good bones that I can take away and be like, oh, I can see it in its historical context. But there are people who will say unequivocally, like you, and be like, no, Martin was trash or bad. It was harmful, right? And there are people who will say Sex and the City was harmful to queer folks. There are people who will say that insert a piece of media here that has these deleterious social structures embedded in the fabric of what they find funny or what have you, and say that those things are not like that they are disposable, that we should move past them. And I guess I don't necessarily have that same approach to comedy all the time. Everything is dependent on what the comedian is saying, right? And that's why I say my concessions are going to be different from the next person's concessions. I think that I laugh sometimes at jokes that are aimed at gay folks, at jokes that are aimed at dark-skinned folks, at folks that are aimed at feminine men sometimes. But that's also because me as an individual, I don't have an issue laughing at myself. I don't have an issue being unserious, right? And I also don't personalize or attach it, even though I reckon multiple things are true always well, not always, but multiple things can be true. And I recognize that colorism, homophobia, racism, all these forms of bigotry have real social, economic, and like health impacts on my life and other folks living it who are similarly positioned on our lives. And sometimes I feel like that shit is funny. I don't think that is consequential. And I'm not saying that anybody is arguing that it isn't, that they have to be opposed to one another. I'm just saying that like, that's my position. I feel like I've been.
I think honestly I agree. Like,
y'all
to be honest, no, because like
multiple times
I spend a lot of my time on my channel talking about like stuff like Family Guy and South Park and stuff like that. And if you want to talk about things that like probably like make a lot of jokes that they probably shouldn't be making, or like that upset people, and like, you know what I'm saying, like stuff like that. And I think if I don't know, it's kind of good because sometimes I'll get comments of like, oh, so you're saying that you agree with this or that, and it's like, no, I just like the dog and the baby. I think it's funny, and like I think that I can acknowledge when the show does things incorrectly, and I can acknowledge when the show does things that like are harmful, like, you know, to a certain degree. Like I think there's episodes of both those shows that I just like don't watch like ever, just because like after the first or second time I was like, this is like This they
It pissed
just
me off, man.
yeah, like they did they were outside of their depth here. Like they shouldn't have like approached this this topic, and they shouldn't have approached it the way that they did. And I think as long as I'm willing to acknowledge, like, okay, like they're telling a joke here, I don't agree with the joke. This is what this joke means. Now, like, let's move on to the next thing. And like Olay was saying, the real issue is when people just kind of refuse to do that, and then comedy is just comedy, and that's it. Like, you know, you can acknowledge what something is, and you can laugh at it as long as you acknowledge what it is and you understand like who it affects, who it hurts, and you know, it's you don't have to be a parrot. You don't have to perpetuate those things.
An internalized mess.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the episode where I was saying that Clay was one of the finest men to ever come out of Love Is Blind.
I just don't see it.
Girl, and I was battered and abused, beat up by the panel because the girls were like, he's an awful person. And I'm like, yeah, he can be fine and
No,
evil.
you're right. Niggas can be fine and wicked. I'm just saying that, like,
and something can be fucked up and funny
to me. Like, he don't look. I think you know what it is. I think this is one of those things where like Clay is Caribbean, and there's a way that he just looked like a typical wicked Caribbean to me. Like I see him, I feel him, and I'm sorry, man. Like, it's true.
Yeah.
I see him, and before I see fine, I'm like, I know where you come from. I know what you are. I know what you about. I know what you up to. Like I'm like, I feel the wickedness in the villain story emanating from him, and it just like, I feel like I forgot to consider where that Clay was fine. Like the first time you brought it up, I was like, I never heard this because I was too busy thinking, look at this wicked playing an 80 face. Like,
no, yes, he was a terrible person. I never believed that he liked that dark-skinned woman. I'm sure that he's a colorist. We've seen the women that he dated before and after.
Sure.
And it's like,
I knew
girl.
that the moment that's another thing. That's another motherfucking thing, okay? I know it. You don't gotta say nothing. Let's be clear. Like, you don't gotta say nothing. I know a nigga that don't like dark-skinned like women 15 miles away. I knew he didn't that he didn't like 80 and why from jump straight. And I think every dark-skinned woman knew too. Like, he didn't have to say it. Jesse Woods is saying the same thing. Everybody's saying that. We see it because we live life. We know them.
But people like to gaslight you though, because the thing is that because this is what I mean. Like, I feel like there's like a spidey sense that you get. But also, this is what I feel like it's so important to realize the difference in gender with colorism. Colorism is going to feel the most severe with people who are presenting as femme, who identify as women, or who are, do you know what I mean? Like that is when it's going to feel the most severe, because there's like, you know, I know that everyone's relationship to Martin is going to be different, but both of you two are guys. Do you know what I mean? Versus like the extra lashing of misogyny on top of the colorism. Did someone say something? Oh wait, sorry. Extra level of misogyny on top of the colorism. That could just be the tipping of the iceberg for somebody like me, to where it's like, this is actually these things are actually too much. And when you were mentioning about how you know that people, like the people you're around, they all get colorism, I'm like, that makes sense. But I feel like I'm talking about specifically how Black women treat other Black women when you talk about colorism with Black. Like that on its own, that is where, and also too with identifying, like Clay has colorist eyes. It's just something about the gaze he has is giving like, I'm not even. But if I say that, now you'll say I'm a witch. I'm a witch if I say that his eyes is colorist.
I'm learning a lot.
You know what I mean? Like, but I can feel it. It's my spidey senses is going off, but we're not allowed to kind of have those like esoteric moments because we're seen as making it up or like over, you know, you're not giving someone a chance, but it's like you can feel it.
No. Yeah. In college, so what you were saying about how other Black gals will interact with you about colorism. In undergrad, all the gals around me in my sorority was all light skin, some mix, all light skin, just me. And what other
were you an AKA?
No, I was not. I was, and I don't claim my sorority.
Okay, fair.
So, no, you good. It wasn't Divine Nine. I just. Well, just put it there. So them, I remember, like this is an issue. I am peeping how you bitches. I'm telling you, I felt like that's the most colorist environment I've experienced since like Bahamas fresh, like just fresh with the womb color. Like I was like, oh my God. And I remember one time trying to like do a program. Like you remember when dark skinned girls came out with like that documentary about colorism, like for dark. You remember? You remember that, Mike?
Yeah.
I remember just trying to be like, just kind of get them to watch that. Like, oh, let's do a program. Like, oh, let's watch that. And these gals recommended to me we watch light skinned girls instead. Because you remember they like came up with a second one after it to make the light skinned gals feel better.
Yes, but they came up with it because of all the backlash that they were receiving because they talk about colorism. That just shows how bad it is. Is like, and also even if we want to talk about funding as well, like there's a lot of funding when it comes to misogyny. A lot of funding. There's only a lot of organizations. White women talk about misogyny. Do you know what I mean? There's like a lot of ways you could. But when it comes to colorism, it's like you're walking by yourself in a desert and you're getting stoned. That's what it feels like. Like it's like there's no money in talking about it. It's not a cool thing to talk about. It's not a comforting thing. It's also going to push up often against people who have the most privilege. The fact that they had to make a here you go, light skinned girls, since y'all getting mad at that, damn, like.
And if you refuse to say, I'm telling you, every time I've ever discussed colorism for even 2 seconds on the channels, the minute I say reverse colorism isn't a thing, bitches breaking their fingers, rioting in the comments. Like, I was with you right up until you said that. I can't even believe you would say that. You don't know my life is a biracial. I'm telling you it was worse for me.
Empathy fatigue.
Now, not too much. Now, first I wanted to say that before I tag that ass, first I wanted to say that black men, first of all, black men have colorism conversations differently. I'm not even sure that it comes up that frequently. And if it does, it's very frivolous. It's very like, oh, that's some light skin shit, as a way to feminize the light skinned man or to try and like build themselves up as a man. But it's never to the same degree, and it's never as consequential as it is among black women. So that's definitely not something that I can speak to. I guess I've just been in disagreement a lot with black people as a person who grew up in Trenton and then from K to 9 and then went to a private school and would still come back home to my Trenton friends. We had very deep disagreements on what constituted racism from someone who is living in the hood in an urban environment and me as someone who's going to be around white people all day. And then come back home and be like, no, that was before I was using the term microaggression. That was racist. And there was a lot of disagreement. So and not just that, like among gay people, because gay people come in so many different shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds. There's a lot of disagreement upon what constitutes like that was, and also being queer, right? Being under the queer umbrella, like what is transphobic, what is queer phobic. There's so much disagreement and debate among the alphabet mafia on what is harmful to the alphabet community. There are LGBT people who don't want the T to be a part of the community, and that's just not how these things function. So there's so much divisiveness. So I was saying, I think that it's not. But when you make it an argument or when you make it in the context of misogynoir or like black women specifically, I can't speak to that. And I definitely think that there is some hard evidence to back up what you were saying. Now, I do want to say, let's trail back to the empathy fatigue. Let's trail on back to the empathy fatigue. While all of my argument can be summed up in you can be fine and evil, you can make up jokes and it still be funny, and I think that there is a utility in acknowledging that dichotomy because you don't have to be ugly or unconventionally attractive to be a terrible person, and something can still be funny and you have to interrogate why it was funny, right? So that's like the crux of my argument. Please, if you take nothing away, that is what I said. But as far as empathy fatigue, when I say I understand it, I think that is an exercise in trying to understand how people come to, it's not an excuse. It's definitely an exercise in trying to understand that, like, because intersectional identities are how we exist. And because there are so many people with the mic trying to tell people, folks who've engaged with Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, Toni Morrison, and folks who are just using their specific anecdotal experience in Newark or in Alabama or in Mississippi or in Nigeria or whatever to describe not just colorism, but racism, fat phobia, xenophobia, etc. I think it can become difficult for people to hear different perspectives, and each person because everybody's an expert with very little expertise. And so I think that it can become it's difficult to follow who has the most appropriate take, who is the most informed on this topic. And not that like, I think it's easy to say, oh, Black women are not easy. It's easy for me in the circles that I roll in to say that Black women are the most educated. And I often would agree with that. But I know plenty of, like, my mom is the most colorist, well, not anymore, but one of the most colorist people that I know. Black woman, brown skinned Black woman. My father, who's a Black man, one of the most colorist, homophobic. So I don't do well, one, with generalizations. And I also think that, like, some of the fatigue that people are experiencing is because of the amount of information we have access to, but not being able to decipher what is appropriate from what is inappropriate or accurate.
I agree too.
I
That's
hear
what, at
you.
least that's what I've noticed too, is that, like, a lot of the conversation when this came back up was really just like, now what? This again? Somebody upset again? Like, it's turned into like that instead of like, okay, like, what's the problem here? Like, let's actually, like, figure this out and talk about this and have, like, an actual conversation. Like, it's to the point now where it seems like people are just exhausted with confronting nostalgia, essentially. Like, it's like this thing that people have lived with for so long and have, like, held so dear. And some people probably haven't even thought about in like 5 years.
But people
or something.
act like they have to engage in discourse when they don't have to.
That's true too.
Like, if you are like, or if you're bothered by it, it's like, you don't have to,
Turn
like,
the phone
engage
off.
in this media analysis, you know? Like, I don't know.
I also think what people are attached to holding on to that they've lived with for a long time is oppression and being oppressors. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I think oftentimes we are educated about oppression, our oppression from our oppressors, like, in the sense that we think, and they teach us to have a very high bar for it so that we tolerate it. It's the reason why you have a bunch of Black people who think it's not racist until somebody puts on a robe and calls them a right? It's like, like, that's a lot of people operate like that. My CJ spent all of when that Shador Sanders, the draft thing, fighting with his boys who were insisting that the NFL can't have racism. They can't be racist because Black people are present. People who have people we've been intentionally just taught these things as, like, it's the same way Tariq was like, they can't see the one-to-one. If you're not saying something about their complexion, they cannot understand that this is colorism or how this is rooted or whatever. We have been taught to think of, we are not to get offended. It's not offensive. It's not oppression until it is. You know what I mean? The plainness in its face. Unless somebody says, it's the reason why people act like they need a confession from somebody to say they're racist. It's like, they'll be like, I'm not racist, as though that means shit, as though it's not judged based on action or what's happening, right? It's like, we need them to say that. Like, someone comes out and be like, I don't have a problem with dark skin. They'd be like, G said I don't have a problem with dark skin people. Like, what does that have?
Right.
That's really how we do it. And I realize that across the board, we constantly think that it has to be somebody saying, I hate gay people and I want them dead. They could be like, oh, I don't like their lifestyle. I don't think they should be able to do that. I don't think they should be able to have the rights. They shouldn't be able to get married. They shouldn't be able to have kids. They shouldn't be able to send their kids in school. They shouldn't be able to go to that restaurant. They shouldn't be able to buy a cake from there. But I'm not homophobic.
Right.
And people be like, but they said they weren't homophobic. It's just their religious beliefs.
right.
But that's my point. It's like, that's what's really happening. Like, I do agree. I do think there's a larger, like, I think there are two things happening, and I think they're a part of a larger umbrella. I think, like, to what Tariq and them are saying, and like empathy fatigue and all of this, and to what Ali is saying, there is this element of, we discourse everything down. People feel because how would they combine it with this idea of cancel culture and, like, oh, how their nostalgia is being analyzed. People do feel this panic and dread that every time something becomes in the discourse, they are not going to be allowed to like it comfortably without having to address it or it means something about them. So there is an element of that, but there's also a larger element of love their oppressive structures. They like being able to make fun of dark skin people. They like being able to make fun of fat people. They like being able to make fun of women. They like being able to make fun of queer people. They like that. They enjoy that, and they don't like. And you saying to them that it's a problem in media says to them that it's a problem when they do it, and they refuse to concede to that because they want to keep it. And it's that simple. Like, to the what now, Herbie? The what now is the problem that they have. Is that it's obvious is that if you say that this is bad, then this would be something that we would eventually stop doing. And to some degree, what I think is funny is we don't make, in 2025, our media doesn't look the way our 1990s colorism and racism and whatever and anti-Blackness looked. It already doesn't look like that. So these people they're telling on themselves where they're having this panic attack about you trying to take Martin or whatever, like, as though it means like as though our media still looks like the Martin era or something, and you're taking something from them present day or not. You still have Martin that still existed, and times have already changed, baby. That was the 90s. So what it really ultimately is, Martin is just a pretense for what you're trying to take away from me is my right to bully these niggas. Yes, like put them in their place,
Yeah.
whatever. They should take it. I don't want to hear from them because that's what's different. It's not like I say, people do this thing where they pretend as though the people who were the subject of these jokes, sorties, whatever, didn't exist and didn't have a problem with it then. They did. You just didn't have to hear from them. They didn't have the power to say it and make it a discourse where people like really address it. That's all that's changed. Niggas knew, because I remember I never not, even before I knew colorism, these things, I never not noticed, oh, the love interest is this light-skinned gal, and oh, this her, and she being talked about, laughed on, bullied on, yada, 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 da, 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 da. Meanwhile, bitches would kill for, like, Pam isn't even like a standard attainable body or look or anything like that. This is already a woman that's a part of an archetype into what Mayowa was saying, like, perception, she's precluded. So you always noticed it. You always felt it. But could you say it? Who would you have said it to? Like, imagine, we can't say it. At 32, we gotta, I realize you might be like, imagine you tried to say this in grade 7 to the boy. Now, y'all don't think, like, that ain't funny. Imagine that. Could you imagine if somebody said GDPs and you said, but that's not funny?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But that's why you roast their ass back. That's also why that is my response. That's also why, like, I think there are people have multiple different responses to navigating that, and my response has always been tag your ass back. And this and I like, my voice is pretty high now for a 27-year-old man. Can you imagine a 12-year-old me who was always mistaken for my mother on the phone? Like, and it was always bent wrist, poke back. I'm double dutching with the girls, and it was anyway. This is anecdotal. I'm not just a kid. I'm also that adult as well. Still, but not today. I'm giving you. I don't know what I'm giving you. I'm not gonna say what I'm giving you, but I did want to say this, Mayowa. I love. I wanted to say that because I was like, oh, I'm gonna tag your ass, and I'm sure, or I imagine you received that in jest, but I did want to say that, like, I loved all your perspectives throughout the show, and I just didn't want you to feel like.
No, I'm playful too. I didn't take it as like.
Oh, look at this positive, loving environment.
I like that.
Sometimes people don't know your sense of humor, so I'm like. Maybe I shouldn't. But also, I would agree with everything you said, Olay. There is definitely an empathy gap. I would also say, again, that there is a diploma divide, an information gap. Like, just because people have more access to things, it doesn't mean that they have first of all, people don't want to know certain stuff. Many people don't. Many people want to be colorist, fatphobic, homophobic, boom, period, full stop.
Yes.
And there are other people who want to learn, and then there are people like, it's not my job to teach you, go read a book. And it's like, mama, where the schools I come from, the kids are graduating. First of all, there's no such thing as an F. Oh, there's no such thing as an F. Sorry. Sorry, here's something in my ear. There's no such thing as an F. So I'm like, what's playing in my ear? There's no such thing as an F. You get, even if you get a 0, you still get a 60. Everybody gets passed. That's in Philly school systems. I think that may still be the case in the Trenton school system. So it's like, are graduating reading high school at a 6th grade level. You telling somebody to go read like Toni Morrison, Bell Hooks, and engage with this on a different level. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. First of all, I'm not. And the response to not knowing how to do that is often a defense. It's like, I didn't want to do this shit anyway, which is probably true of their level of empathy. But I also think that a part of this has to do with, like, there is an information device. So people, and also when people are like, when you say, oh, they don't have to engage the discourse, you don't have to listen to these different perspectives. It's like, these perspectives, when they become viral, are everywhere. They're retweeted on Twitter, they're on Threads, they're on TikTok, they're on even when you want to go to these girls love the Shade Room may highlight a piece of this conversation in a very problematic way for very problematic people to go and say their colorist shit in the comments. And so everybody's giving their anecdotal experience. And I just feel like there's a huge bit of this is people are comfortable being mean, bigoted. And another piece of this is, like, there is, I don't often like when everybody has the right to say what they want to do, and I can respect it. But me as a person, I don't live for it's not my job to teach you. I believe it was Huey P. Newton who said it is the job or the responsibility of the literate minority to articulate the needs of the majority, right? Something to that effect. Don't quote me, but you'll find it. It's Huey P. Newton. It's you got Google Kids. And so I do think that it is a bit of, it's the responsibility of the folks with the information to disseminate that information in a way that is able to be received by people of all different academic and educational strata. And I often feel like, or not often, sometimes I feel like that is not the way people are interested in disseminating information because of a righteous rage that we have because of like, bitch, I'm being attacked from this angle. Me personally, it's like homophobia, femphobia, depending on how I'm dressed and when I open my mouth, colorism, racism. And it's like, bitch, I just don't want to be anybody's educator. And Black women have a right to feel the same way. I'm not saying people don't have a right. I'm just saying that's not my approach. And I see that as part of the problem as well.
I get that.
Yeah.
I think that's valid.
I also feel like, to speak to what Maya was saying earlier about like Black women not wanting to acknowledge colorism, like I feel like some people who are like marginalized, they want to be like pick-me's or something for like people who are privileged. Like they want to be like, oh, I'm not offended by that. I'm not sensitive like y'all.
Yes.
And yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to say was like, with the joke thing, like, I feel like people act like comedy is like untouchable or something. Like you're not allowed to criticize it at all, or you're not allowed to. Because like for me, sometimes like I talked about this when I made my video about Norbit. Like sometimes I'm just offended by how lazy the joke is. Like I'm just like, you couldn't come up with something more creative than that. Like that's sometimes
Norbit
my
is
main
shitty.
thing. And it's like, I don't know. It's weird the way people like. I don't know. They want to die on the hill of like really lazy jokes. Like, I don't know.
I agree with that. I feel like people see comedy as some protected space that's like you can't critique it. It's a joke. Remember, like it's a joke, so it has to be. And it's like it didn't land. Like even when Cardi B doing that whole thing, getting really upset and saying to her, "Oh, she was just joking about her fat fans." It's like it didn't land.
Right.
Your people, the people are offended. It's okay to instead of it being like, no, you guys just don't understand how deep the joke was. It's so complex and so funny that you guys just
and if you
can't
didn't
get
laugh,
into
you're
the joke.
sensitive.
It's like, babe, it didn't do what it needed to do. And another reason why I think that Martin needs a spanking is because I don't know if he was the first one.
This 50-year-old man.
Some old school
That must be the
spanking.
new metric. We're not trying to cancel it. We just
He needs a spanking. Like I feel like he really made it so common for other Black men to dress as Black women. Like I feel like I remember that there were Halloweens that white people were dressing as Shanae. Like they would put the long nails on, they'll wear do you know what I mean? Like the way that had a global impact in Spain, they were dressing as Shanae. You know, it had a global impact of how it changed how people started to see dark skinned women globally. But also the fact that so many Black cis men thought it was so funny to put a wig on and pretend to be Black women, like Chris Rock, like Martin, like and a lot of them later down the road have Jamie Foxx. They all are coons. I don't know if I can say that, but they all are problematic now. Do you know what I mean? But they were so comfortable doing that. None of them, I don't think any of them are married to Black women. I don't know. But just the idea that was like
a Black woman.
You said what?
Chris Rock's divorced from a Black woman.
Okay, exactly. She knew what was going on. So all of those things, these people were doing that, and that became so normalized. And then that also made it even more intense for trans misogyny. You know, because people were starting to see trans people as cis men wearing wigs, trying to be women. So not only did it make it bad for cis Black women, it made it bad for trans women too.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's just like that isn't, and then years later they want to go on interviews and talk about how I realized that when a Black man puts on a wig, it's him demasculizing himself.
Putting on the dress. Putting on the dress.
It's all about
You still
masculinity.
found a way to make it about you. You still found a way, instead of it being like, I realized that was offensive to cis women and trans women. No. I realized that I was taking away my own masculinity.
Yeah, for the brothers.
Making myself like them.
For the brothers, I can't put that dress on. What's going on?
Yes.
And it's the only time they understand, like, it's the only time they want to actually engage in white supremacist discourse. It's like, oh no, the white man, the white man who put me in a wig because they want to send a signal to young brothers that you can't be a man. And it's like, well, you could have always walked away from that deal. Nobody had held you at gunpoint. You chose to take the worst ideas about what it means to be a Black woman and exacerbate them and put them on your platform, right? And exaggerate them, and put them on your platform.
Also, oftentimes, most times that you see like Black men dressed up as women, they're in self-created roles. Yeah. Martin
it's
created
true.
Martin. Like it's a self-named shit. Most of the people you think of, all the Black TikTok, Vine, social YouTube comedians, they made those. Those are their own personal. They got to dress themselves. They went and did.
if you want to do drag, just say that. And that's what also annoys me about it is
Martin
you just
got two of
want to
them
do
things.
drag. You just want to put it on. You want to do it. But instead of you committing to it and doing it correctly and doing it in a way, this is the only way that you can express your draggery in a normal way, in a socially acceptable way. And that's why you have to make fun of these women and make the exactly, because if they did it and they were just, you know, painting their nails and doing it as some kind of creative way, people wouldn't like that.
Yep.
Yeah. People are always asking the question of like, what's the difference between a drag queen, or like, because one, white men have done this as well, right? There's John Travolta in Hairspray. There is Jimmy Kimmel. There are insert white man, John Cena. Many white men who have put on wigs. It obviously is not the same because sometimes when white men are putting on wigs, they're putting on a ghetto accent. They're emulating black women as well. Wait, can y'all hear me?
Can you also hear?
I
And
can't.
no,
Oh my God,
I'm sure
no.
like it's still recording, but he's frozen on our end.
No.
Herbie, when
It looks
will
like
you
y'all
return?
can't hear me.
Yes. Can I add
Oh my
on?
God.
Can I add on something? I was gonna say that when it comes to like colorism and men dressing up as women, I also think it's really interesting the kind of personalities they embody. Because remember when Miss Prada, whenever she would dress up, or whenever Brandon would dress up as Miss Prada, the one who was like, I don't want to be black. I'm not black. I'm a white woman.
Joanna the Scammer?
Joanna the Scanner. Yeah, sorry. The
That
first
was
name
my
was Miss Prada.
bitch.
But you see how whenever Brandon would dress up as Joanne the Scammer, the personality was that they were sedity, stuck up, you know, not friendly, not like, you know, and they were like, oh, I don't want to be white. I don't want, you know, almost rejecting their blackness. But whenever Martin dressed up as Shaniqua, it was aggressive, it was loud, it was mean, it was just, so even within the dressing up as women, there's the colorism part, because whenever they dress up as light-skinned women, they're like soft and like, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, I don't want to do that. And then the dark-skinned one is like more like masculine.
Yeah, Joanna Scammer was living her best life. I loved me some Joanna Scammer. Like that was really an error on Instagram. Y'all didn't love Joanna Scammer, only me. Listen. It was Joanna Scammer. When I tell you,
I love her. I love Terry Joe too.
Who's Cherry Joe?
Terry Joe
from TikTok.
Oh, the gal that's on TikTok.
Yes, it's another black person that plays a white woman.
She's white. Okay, I get the bit. I see it now.
Yeah, like a black Southern. She's a white Southern woman from Bonton, Louisiana, like from True Blood.
Oh,
it's
that's funny as shit.
Yeah.
Oh,
did you watch? Well, this is so off topic.
Of course, I watched True Blood. Of course, I did.
A girl who gets it. A girl who gets it. I forgot what I was saying before I was rudely interrupted.
What you mean?
When you got cut off, you were like listing off
something. Oh
like
yeah,
white men.
Oh yes, Jimmy Kimmel. You were saying, or you were spitting.
Two on food.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's not nearly as consequential. I just brought that up. I brought that up to expose the hypocrisy of black male hoteps who are saying like, you see, the only way for a black man to get big, and it's like, well, there are a myriad of white men who throw on a wig and perform, and often, and I've seen many a white man who will throw on black scent with that wig and be emulating black women. So it's like, who is the butt of the joke? Who is actually meant to experience harm as a consequence of this joke? It's not the men who took the agency to portray black women, right? It's the actual black women and black trans folks. But I also think there's a very clear distinction between drag queens and straight men who perform stereotypes of, obviously trans women. So I don't have to get into it, but it's the drag queen argument for me, because both of those are like characters that they put on. And one is just, it's literally just like the difference between appreciation and folks who actually live life perceived as feminine. Like most gay people, or many gay people and drag queens, grow up being like, why you talk like a girl? Why do you walk like a girl? Why do you act like a girl? As them just navigating life, experiencing femphobia. Not to the degree of folks who are, female women and femmes, right? But they experience femphobia. So it's a way of reclaiming and taking up that space and paying homage to not just to women, but also exaggerating the femininity that people want to castigate them for. So there's a very big difference between that and someone creating Shanae to further these ideas of ghetto black women who are aggressive and etc.
I can't imagine. You imagine my brother make up a Shanae character, and then when accused of colorism, say, I made it in my one. Like, who would be like, who would be flattered by like, oh, Shanae was modeled after me?
It's true.
It's so offensive. Right. I'm like, You made
And I
it
feel
in
like
your sister's honor.
I also feel like it made it hard for people, for dark skinned women to wear, like, I remember when people wear bright lipstick and people were like, oh, you look like Shanae. Like, and there was all these things that started to become
Yes.
like how you wanted, once again, muting yourself because of this mainstream discourse that was happening.
1000%. And it's not like, and it's so like the way people are gaslight you. I was really annoyed by this. People trying to act like Sinead was some kind of honoring character. Y'all remember the episode where there's a artist, maybe it's Kid from Kid and Play, I think it was, or someone who was on the Martin show, and the date that he wins or whatever is Shanae. Like he gets the date with Shanae, and it's all about Shanae trying to put the moves on him. Like,
Is that Kid?
and
I
be
think
like all
it is
horrified.
Kid.
Like, I'm like, she is treated as like, don't act like that character was like, we're just projecting on to Shanae these negative connotations. No. You had her as the picture of and undesirability and just the joke and the gag or whatever. Men ain't want her and she jealous of Gina across the tan, don't like Gina. You know what she was doing. She was a caricature version of what you were pretending Pam was whenever you would talk at work. Like, so I was irked by these people lying, playing in my face, like, oh, it was his sister, so he hated sister. That's all I heard is sister dog. Y'all felt like this is a good show?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at her be. Yeah.
You know what I feel like? You know what I feel like? To you bitches, you keyboard warriors, you could suck my pussy from the front and the back. Okay? This is what I always say. I feel like I'm a student of a lot of people, but largely intersectional feminist theory. I view it, and this is my relationship to it, because I view it as aspirational, something that I'd like to aspire to as I'm unlearning a myriad of things under the umbrella of white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist, blah, 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 right? And so I'm always, genuinely, I'm always open to being wrong, to being called in, because that's like what this shit is. But also, at the end of the day, I love a key. And that's what I'm standing on that. Something can be f***ed up and funny, and we can have this discourse, but I'm still gonna laugh. And also, I make jokes at my own expense, and that's where I'll leave that.
Do I make jokes at my own expense? Like, I crack.
Not that they're always going to be colorist or homophobic. There are multifacets to me, right?
There's so many
that are outside of these things.
Say that's funny about people without saying a thing. Like just the other day, like when I popped up on your live and you was cracking jokes on how I do my IG stories, answering people nice, then getting mad at my own. Like that's hilarious. Yes. You ain't call me no dark skin fat nigga. Like, well, no, very funny and very apt. I said, ooh, you got me there. I feel seen. Let me stop posting.
I think personally too, I think as a sit down comedian, I think a big part of like what I am attracted to in terms of like the kind of comedy that I disseminate and the comedy that I'm attracted to is something that pushes on the verge of what's problematic while also offering a context where we can be informed about those very structures as well. So I think that me personally, I think people have a right to feel how they feel about any sort of comedy and, you know, be a Martin lover or a Martin hater. But independent of Martin, I think that I am drawn to provocative comedy because I want to see where we're going. If it's trash, it's trash. I can call it basuda. But and I also think that like I'm funny without being colorist and femphobic and all these other things. But yeah, I think that's where I will leave that. Very incomplete, but I'll leave that there.
There we go.
I was going to say, the last thing I was going to say was, I feel like there's a lot of really good examples of how you can talk about systems of oppression and make that funny. And I know this is like a little, like she's not a typical comedian, funny person, but if y'all ever watch Bell Hooks's The New School,
no, I haven't
like
seen
where
that.
she does these interviews where so she's done like different interviews with like Hari Kondabuli or like Cornel West or Laverne Cox. Like she does these little interviews, and she, like, her nature to me is very funny because she has a very high pitched voice, and like the way she communicates is very, I don't know, she's just very direct. And I feel like to me, seeing how she shuts people down in academic spaces is humorous to me. And I feel like Yes, you should watch her whole thing. That's how I started to. That's actually what my introduction to Black feminism.
Oh, I'm about to watch
was
her
watching
Laverne.
all of
Oh my God,
of her
it's so
things.
good.
All of
Yeah.
her things. That's where I was like kind of seeing. But I was gonna say like you can do comedy that doesn't like, and also for me, I mean, I do comedy in Atlanta, and I intentionally am trying to create a alternate scene because in the comedy scene it's so toxic, it's so that I am creating an alternative scene of comedy of people who want to not punch down in it or whatever. But I just think that comedy can be so expansive that, you know, especially as I'm a queer, lesbian person, dark skinned person. So all these things about myself makes me kind of on the fringes of stuff. And there's just so much humor that can be found outside of the mainstream. And Martin does still deserve that spanking. While he's alive.
Spanking this 50-year-old man is so funny to me.
Yeah.
Stop what you're doing and listen up. You just watched a video on one of my channels, but the Illuminati-verse is huge, and I want to tell you what everything is and how to find it. The Illuminati-verse has 6 channels. On the YouTube homepage of any one of those channels, every single channel in the Illuminati-verse is featured at the bottom of the page, so you can always easily find them, okay? Remember I said that. Don't say I ain't tell you how to find it. Subscribe to my main channel, Illuminati, to find my Illuminati productions, which are my long-form video essays, and also all of my backlog of content. Subscribe to my second love child, Illuminati Pop, for my weekly video essays analyzing my favorite TV and movie shows and characters. Illuminati Pop also has its own Patreon where you get all of those videos uncensored. Subscribe to my channel, Olay Friends, for my podcast, Olay Friends. New episodes of Olay Friends come out every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to Olay Chill for new episodes of my podcast, Olay Chill, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And also, both Olay Friends and Olay Chill are both available on streaming platforms like Spotify. Subscribe to Illuminati Bites if you want my takes, but you don't have an hour to spend. Subscribe to Illuminati Politics for my political analysis and my State of the Union type addresses on my show O Squared. And last but not least, subscribe to my Substack Illuminati for my written work.